the conventional framework that we now operate off, especially in America, has very much been framed by John D. Rockefeller, as we were talking about.
Yeah, so J.D. Rockefeller, that everyone knows as the father of pharmaceutical drugs, he actually was one of the major supporters of homeopathy in America. He actually funded homeopathy schools. He wanted homeopathy taught in Yale and Boston. He was funding homeopathy school, and it was one of the major supporters. Even today, if we go back to the World Health Organization, homeopathy is considered the second biggest form of medicine globally. In countries like India, is used in hospital and is used as part of integrative care. In Cuba, is used everywhere. It's used for prophylaxis during infection diseases. In France, in Germany, in Italy, where I'm from, Romania, medical doctors still prescribe homeopathy sometimes. In France, I think it's 98% of medical doctors, they would normally prescribe homeopathy as first line of defense. So homeopathy is energy medicine, is energetic medicine. So best way to make it easier to understand that I could describe it is think about acupuncture. The practitioner will put needles in certain areas of the body that correspond to meridians. So they are centers where energy gets exchanged, and so they will stimulate with the needle the energy center, and the energy will then rebalance and stimulate the body to do its job. Now, homeopathy is a very similar concept, but what we do is that we stimulate the body to remember how to heal itself, that innate intelligence that literally is there since birth or conception.
Is something standing between you and your happiness? It was for me. I had to face my depression and the constant negative self-talk. Therapy helped me realize I deserve to be happy. That's why this podcast is called I Choose Health, because I made the choice to heal and I want to share that with you. As a gift to you, we've partnered with BetterHelp as our sponsor to help you start your own healing journey. We all face moments when life feels overwhelming, whether it's stress, anxiety, or just feeling stuck. Talking to someone can make a real difference. And that's where our sponsor, BetterHelp, comes in. BetterHelp offers professional online therapy that's convenient, affordable, and entirely on your schedule. You can connect with a licensed therapist by video, phone, or even chat, whatever works best for you. Let our sponsor, BetterHelp, support you on your journey to better mental health. You can get 10% off your first month by going to betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth. That's betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth for 10% off your first month. Take the first step toward feeling better today.
As a teenager, I decided to live better, so I gave up the meat, eggs, and cheddar. At 20 and 30, I wanted more, so I strengthened my mind and my core. Living a life that is healthier and wealthier because I choose health.
So, life has an interesting way of, taking you in different directions. And so at this point, having been a personal trainer for 5 years, being a vegan for the last 18, 19 years, I always thought that when I majored in history in college that I would, eventually, be a history professor someday and be teaching in colleges, giving these lectures, these different, conventions. These were all the things that I had in my mind. Life, as I said, has an interesting way of taking you in different directions. And so while I was in college, one of the things that I studied was, again, the history of science, but also looking at the medical field. One of the topics covered, was homeopathy and the way that homeopathy in America was treated initially. It didn't have the greatest reception at first, even though there were some people who did accept it and use it. And, I'm still seeing a similar behavior and attitude towards it now. But I do realize that there is something shifting in the zeitgeist a bit. And I think that we're starting to return or go back to a more holistic way of dealing with things and healing ourselves, healing our bodies. And so this is why I'm excited to have our guest on today, and hopefully I don't butcher her name. But, joining us today is Dr. Antonella Artemisia Di Cillo. And, She is a fully qualified homeopath, a homeoherbalist practitioner, and a specialist in iridology and nutrition. Antonella also brings expertise in functional mushrooms and is completing her master's in medical herbalism. So, Dr. Antonella, welcome to the I Choose Health podcast.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you. I just need to clarify that I'm not a doctor as a medical doctor. So
Okay.
I am a fully qualified homeopath and a level 2 mushroom practitioner, and I am completing my studies in Master Herbal Medicine, which is a branch of medical herbalism. But thank you for the doctor. I mean, in Italy, anyone who's graduated, like I am, is a doctor by default. So I take the doctor anyway.
So that's what I was wondering. So are you based in Italy, or are you in the UK right now?
So I've been living in the UK for the past 20 plus years. So I moved to the UK from the south of Italy in my 20s, and then I completed my studies here, in Italy, and then some additional studies in finance back then. And then after a few years in finance, I retrained and went back to uni and did my qualifications.
So if it is Italian, is it Di Cillo or Di Cillo?
Di Cillo, actually.
Okay,
Yes,
got it.
very well pronounced.
Okay. Yeah, I took Italian in my first year of college, so it was one of the things I had to do to fulfill the language requirements. So I remember it being, the CI
Yeah.
being pronounced that way. So, Antonella, I want to know what originally drew you to alternative and holistic health, right? Because you could have easily chosen conventional medicine. Conventional medicine is obviously way more celebrated. It's way more accepted. So what originally drew you to alternative and holistic health?
Yeah, so there is, I would say, a component in the family in the sense that all the female lineage from my dad's side and my mom's side, we could describe them today as cunning folks or healers in the village. So they would be back then what we would call Herbal doctor or witch doctors. And then when I was in my 17, 18 years, when I was thinking about what type of profession I wanted to get into a university, so there was a choice between studying medicine and studying finance. And I had a passion for both of them, actually. But for some reason, I just decided to go into finance, most likely because back then I was very much wanted to make a career, make money, and prove myself, make my parents proud. And so I went into finance, and which led me, jump through a few years to the UK, where I was working for Bank of America Merrill Lynch. And I had a very, very satisfying career, but it came at a cost, a very, very significant cost. So I grew up with this idea of using herbs as, first aid. So I would always use herbs. So in me has always been, just a given that I would use herbs rather than pharmaceuticals. Of course, there were situations where if there was a very major infection, then of course we would be using antibiotics. But mainly, we didn't grow up with a lot of pharmaceuticals around us anyway. And then, I was in finance and I was working really long hours, and there was a particular time where I had to be in Japan to do some work and to cover some roles. And I was really back then I was quite stressed, really long hours, 14, 15 hours. You have to prove yourself, go, and I really burned out. So I had what we today in our world in natural medicine we will call adrenal fatigue, which is a complete burnout. So I was completely tired, always very depressed. I couldn't really see the reason why I was doing what I was doing. I couldn't feel satisfied. And I actually went to see a Kempo practitioner, which is traditional Japanese medicine. And that's the person who actually started to initiate me in the world of mushroom, but also this whole concept of looking at who you are as a person, what makes you happy truly throughout the day, what energies you bring into this world, what is your soul purpose. So it kind of opened to a multitude of questions that I really hadn't really thought of, because probably like many young adults, I was really pushing into my career. And so he actually treated me with some medicinal mushrooms, among which reishi, and that's where I started to grow this passion, wanted to learn more. And he did say to me that my curiosity and my roots, my female lineage, made him think I would probably be good at retraining and become myself a practitioner. And at the beginning, I was like, no, I don't think so. But when I went back to the UK, and I realized, hold on one second, my life actually at the moment doesn't have the same meaning that I actually felt when I was dealing with this person, when I was talking about, a bigger, wider sense of life. And I sat down and I decided to actually go for it, and I retrained. And the first 2 years were me working full-time while studying. And then I decided to actually take an additional and bigger leap of faith, and I resigned from my job in finance. Everyone thought I was being crazy. How can you? There's no, financial stability. But I then completely dedicated myself to my studies. And that's when I started to, then learn more things. So I started with herbal medicine. And then within the School of Herbal Medicine, where I've been studying, and I graduate fully in June, I then studied nutrition, specifically plant-based nutrition and living nutrition and iridology. And then while I was studying herbal medicine, I then decided to learn more about homeopathy to bring in the energetic, deeper side of the healing. And so that's how I started to bring in more discipline into my life and then into my clinic once I started it.
It's interesting, and I think we'll get into it a little bit more in terms of like the iridology. I don't know if you can go into it a little bit more, because I'm obviously familiar with holistic health and homeopathy, but iridology is more of a new term for me. So if you could just break that down a little bit so we can understand it a little bit better as it fits into the other practices that you have.
Yeah, so iridology we could consider it the discipline that studies the fibers and structures and marking in your iris. And your iris are a little bit like a map. So within the iris, then we have different areas which are associated to different organs or body systems. And we have a physical side of iridology, which again concentrates and focuses more onto the strength for the areas in the body, the organs and the systems that require a little bit more of TLC and support and love and care. And then we have an emotional element of iridology, which is more related to what emotions underlying certain organs are at play, and for which we need to find a positive outlet. Because the idea is that before symptoms express in the body as physical symptoms, there is a component related to the emotions or the energetics that haven't been expressed, or they are slightly out of balance, and therefore if we don't stop and listen to those imbalances, then we might develop certain physical symptoms. Now, of course, iridology isn't a diagnostic tool as such. It's more a deep dive into what your body is trying to tell you through physical symptoms. So I would see it as more of a blueprint. So your eyes are more like a blueprint of your potentials and gifts. And if those gifts and potentials aren't expressed, then they could, present physically and manifest physically in certain symptoms or conditions. So pretty much in a nutshell, this is what iridology is and what we do with it.
Oh, thank you for that. It was just something I needed some clarification on, because it was something that was relatively new to me. And I want to know from you also, how do you personally define true holistic health?
Yes, so I personally think that one of the best definitions that I've come across so far in terms of holistic health is actually the definition of the WHO, so the World Health Organization, because they actually defined it, and that was already around 1948. So we're talking about quite a few years ago. The World Health Organization defined health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And pretty much that sums up what we and I believe. And I think this definition is really essential to emphasize that health is not just, the absence of physical symptoms and physical disease, and it's more the idea of bringing the mental wellness, so emotional side of it, the emotional component. If someone doesn't have any physical major, invalidating symptoms, but they struggle with depression, they struggle with mood swings, with emotional disorders, if they don't feel supported, they don't have a network to support them into the day-to-day life, if they feel that financially they're not secure and so they can't afford other form of support health-wise, then these are all elements that will impact the sense of well-being and health in a person. And so I think personally, when I know that a patient that has come to see me has cleared out his symptoms or their symptoms, and they feel satisfied with their day-to-day job, when they feel supported, when they have really positive and constructive relationships, when they feel that they are contributing and they have a sense of purpose, then that's when I think that health is actually been reached, or healing has happened. So for me, holistic health means looking at the individual in relation to their inner world, the external world, and relationship with nature, because we are microcosm or a bigger macrocosm, and the contact with nature and the relationship with nature is essential for our well-being. So I would bring connection with nature into this holistic idea of health as well.
I find it really interesting that, I feel like every ideological corner of the world is being reoriented towards like some holistic sense of health, right? Because growing up, health used to be seen as how you eat and how you exercise and stuff like that. And then at some point, it started to take on this holistic framework of people being concerned about their mental health. And I think mental health aspect has really helped bring everything in, because people started to realize that, this particular individuals were not well adjusted to society, even though they were healthy physically, probably ate well, probably slept well, but still mentally there were some things going on. So I think one of the amazing things about the acceptance of, or even I would say the deeper dive into mental health, has really helped to usher in this holistic view of health. And so I think that's one of the things I'm kind of thankful for.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I think homeopathy plays a major role in addressing energetic or emotional imbalances, because we tend to consider mental health as, like, say, the depression or bipolar as labels. And what I've noticed in my practice, in my experience, is that often when you work on the underlying energies that sometimes and oftentimes, I would say, are actually connected to what is called transgenerational trauma. And so emotions or events or traumatic experiences that in the family lines have not been dealt with, then it's more likely that you'll develop what could be considered a mental condition, a depression or bipolar. And I think by addressing those elements and going back to how you've grown up in the family, have you grown up by suppressing your emotion? Has grief never been dealt with? Has anger ever been dealt with? So if we then start shifting and bringing those layers, emotional layers out through the work of homeopathy, then this is when we start seeing shifting, when we start seeing people becoming more aware of their emotions. There's more consciousness around the emotions that need to be dealt with. And I think when that element comes into the equation and it gives you more empowerment, because you do understand how you're feeling, why you're feeling, what you're feeling, then it's easier as well to manage your day-to-day life. And that's why I think the work that we do in holistic medicine is so important.
Now, in your practice, how do you balance tradition, intuition, and modern health research? Because
Yeah. So
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it comes from experience, but it also comes from dealing with patient. Personally, in my clinic, I deal with any sort of like a health condition. I support any sort of a condition and at any age. But I have a special interest in chronic complex conditions. So I would always be seeing patients or clients that have, say, autoimmune disorders, or they would like to help with integrative cancer care or neurodegeneration, autism, so Lyme disease, so quite complex chronic conditions. And so obviously, inevitably, we have to look at the modern approach in the researches because we need to understand the pathology. We trained to understand the pathology. That's what we do in schools like herbal medicine or homeopathy when they are accredited schools to qualify. So we do anatomy and pathology. So we have to learn what we're dealing with. We have to understand how the body works and physiology and what happens when the body doesn't work, so the pathology. And so that element has to come into the equation, and that all has to do with modern understanding of the body. We also then have to look at tradition, and so we have to then apply, okay, so if I have this person with these physical symptoms, the way we see it, and I see it, and I was taught to see it, is the physical symptom is the language of the body. Is the body trying to tell me something? So the idea is we're not going to suppress it as modern medicine or allopathic medicine would do. We will try. That's my cat. Sorry, it's come to see me.
Okay.
I tried to lock him out, but he found a way. He always does it. So that's smiling for you. This is the tradition as well. We'll always have a cat or a dog somewhere, animal, like energetic. They are very inspiring animal. And so in terms of tradition is all around understanding what's behind the symptom. So, for example, in homeopathy, we have the concept of susceptibility. What makes a person more susceptible to certain conditions? And so we'll try and look at what it is that is causing this person with this lifestyle, with this nutrition, with these emotions, with this way of thinking to develop a certain condition. Because even two people, we say the same autoimmune disorder might have two complete different physical symptoms, yet they are labeled with the same allopathic, diagnosis. But then we go a step, not more than one step, we go quite a few steps deeper to try and understand the person and the individual that comes to us with a condition. And so we don't apply a remedy that could be the same for all of them having, rheumatoid arthritis. We try and apply remedies that are specific for the individual that comes to me with rheumatoid arthritis. So that would be traditional application. And then intuition has very much to do with, as soon as they sit down, the observation, the way they move their hands, the way they speak, the color of their hair, the skin complexion, some of the things that they say, the way they say them, it's very much, it helps me already understanding what type of remedy and what type of experiences or emotions or trauma this person might have come to see me with or without even being aware of it. So it's kind of like a bit like a cocktail. You make the perfect drink by mixing different tastes and different doses, and it all depends on sometimes the flow and how things flow. But definitely there's a component of all of them, because if someone comes to me with a really high level of inflammation and pain and chronic pain, they're definitely not going to be that prone in discussing energetic or emotions. They just want to have something that can help them reduce that physical symptom. So obviously in that sense, the modern approach, the more allopathic approach will take place.
So I wonder as well, because I just kind of spoke about it at the beginning of the episode about how homeopathy has been perceived. What misconceptions do people often have about holistic practitioners like yourself?
So I think personally, a lot of the misconception actually comes from not really understand. So I think often misconception is all around not understanding the topic and or maybe not having enough education around the topic. So, and also it comes from this connection, from this idea that we are not just matter, we're not just physical, but we are in fact deep down into our core, down to the little atoms that make us, we are made of energy. So if there was no energy, electrons and protons and neutrons within the atoms and outside the atoms, they wouldn't even move. So there would be no life without energy. So it's this disconnect disconnection from who we are that I think personally creates misconception. And then obviously there's always a certain degree of wanting to discredit, and something that's been on in the past few centuries, discredit traditional medicine, because the way I see it is we're not really alternative. So homeopathy or herbal medicine are traditional form of medicines. Up to 200 years ago, before the pharmaceutical drugs became available, traditional medicine, homeopathy was everywhere globally, and so was, and still, herbal medicine is. So I think it comes from very much a lack of understanding and a lack of knowledge of what we're discussing. And I think if people had a little bit more of a background that was objective information and historical information around, for example, the history of homeopathy and how it was constantly and progressively suppressed, when at the very beginning was practice everywhere globally. I mean, you guys in the US had something like 100, if not more, homeopathic hospitals. There were medical doctors that were trained. It was taught at Yale, it was taught at Boston. There were nurses and doctors that were retraining in homeopathy. There was an association, the American Association of Homeopathy, that counted I don't know how many members. So it was a really major form of medicine. Even today, if we go back to the World Health Organization, homeopathy is considered the second biggest form of medicine globally. In countries like India, is used in hospital and is used as part of integrative care. In Cuba, is used everywhere. It's used for prophylaxis during infection diseases. In France, in Germany, in Italy, where I'm from, Romania, medical doctors still prescribe homeopathy sometimes. In France, I think it's 98% of medical doctors, they would normally prescribe homeopathy as first line of defense. Say, for example, during colds or flu seasons, they will prescribe a remedy called, I can never pronounce it correctly, coccylinum, and it's we don't use it as much here in the UK, but it's very much used in France, and it's one of the most prescribed homeopathic medicine in Europe. So, like I said, I think it comes from a misconception. Misconception comes from a lack of knowledge and understanding of what homeopathy is, what it does, what it did, and how it was willingly suppressed around the 19th century and onward. So that's how I would see the origin of misconception.
As you were talking about homeopathy in the U.S., we had an interesting discussion prior to the recording. And, the conventional framework that we now operate off, especially in America, has very much been framed by John D. Rockefeller, as we were talking about. I kind of want you to share that story because I found that very interesting.
Yeah, so J.D. Rockefeller, that everyone knows as the father of pharmaceutical drugs, he actually was one of the major supporters of homeopathy in America. He actually funded homeopathy schools. He wanted homeopathy taught in Yale and Boston. He was funding homeopathy school, and it was one of the major supporters. I mean, we have to highlight that, for example, here in the UK, the royal family, they've always been incredible supporters of homeopathy. The late Queen Elizabeth, she would never travel without any homeopathic kits. She'd had a medical doctor and homeopaths treating the whole family. And King Charles now, he's actually one of the patrons, and they fund the Faculty of Homeopathy in London, and other major, elites and royal families all across Europe and, in the globe, they used to use homeopathy. And so there was always this, major role that this form of medicine played. Like I said, Rockefeller himself, he was a massive fan. He had 3 homeopaths treating his family while he was then pumping money into the pharmaceutical drug department. What happened is, when he realized that there was a lot of profit to be made through pharmaceuticals, then he realized that there needed to be a way to pull the attention away from homeopathy. And so what they did was to kind of enforce a regulation that said that if any medical doctor was to practice homeopathy or to train in homeopathy or even consult with a homeopath, they would be literally like erased and they license from the association, the medical association, American Medical Association, and they will lose their license. So bit by bit, they actually forced medical doctors to stop practicing homeopathy because otherwise they will lose their license. I mean, there were situation I read in the past where, for example, in the same household, one person would be a medical doctor and the other person would be a homeopath, and there were serious concern around how they could be managing this, almost illegal under the regulation relationship. So it was really pushed out of university, and then with the Flexner report, where they just wanted to have scientific method applied in medical schools, then homeopathy was completely swiped out. And in the UK, up until I think it was 2012, that we had the last homeopathic hospital closed down. And before then, homeopathy was part of the NHS, so the national health system, and it was considered integrative and funded by the NHS. I mean, the problem is there was an attempt to kind of hide this side of the history, and I think it's a shame, because I personally don't think there should be any conflict between modern medicine, allopathic medicine, and homeopathy or herbal medicine. I think that ultimately we all want patients and people to be well, to live their life at their fullest, to be the best version of themselves as people, as human beings, spiritual beings, and physically. And therefore, I think my dream would be to bring back homeopathy and herbal medicine into hospitals like it was up until, a few hundred years ago.
I know for a lot of people, they need to feel the tangibility of it, right? So can you give some like real life examples or real world situations where homeopathy and herbalism complement each other, in real world practice?
Yeah, so I think just for the audience benefit, it might be quite good to kind of highlight the difference between homeopathy and herbal medicine. So homeopathy is energy medicine, is energetic medicine. So best way to make it like easier to understand that I could describe it is think about acupuncture. The practitioner will put needles in certain areas of the body that correspond to meridians. So they are centers where energy gets exchanged. And so they will stimulate with the needle the energy center, and the energy will then rebalance and stimulate the body to do its job. Now, homeopathy is a very similar concept, but what we do is that we stimulate the body to remember how to heal itself, that innate intelligence that literally is there since birth or conception even, but we do it through medicine. So you will ingest a substance, very diluted substance, and that frequency of that medicine will then stimulate your body based on what it needs to be addressed. And obviously the key element in homeopathy is that we have to find that remedy that really resonate with that person in terms of who that person is, mind, emotion, physical symptoms, trauma, anything that make that person who they are and how they come to the clinic. That's the remedy. So it's called like, cure, like. So we need to find the most resonant remedy for the person based on a totality of symptoms. And so that's what homeopathy is. And the way complements herbal medicine is it is a material form of medicine. So we actually give crude doses. So for example, someone who comes to see us with, or come to see a herbalist with, say, endocrine dysfunctions or infertility, will be giving them based on, a very comprehensive clinical, medical and personal history, very thorough consultation, will make up remedies that are made with herbs that will go and literally support the body. So there's a natural process of metabolizing those herbs. The herbs will be then kicking in and support the body. They're not suppressive, they are supportive, but there's a natural material component of the herb that gets ingested and then will work on a certain body or on a certain organ or a certain body system. Homeopathy instead will intervene along with herbal medicine to address all the energetics underneath. So herbs also have their own energetic, because most of the homeopathic remedies that we use are all natural and most of them come from herbs, but it's a different process where with herbs we actually target the physical side. With homeopathy we target the emotional. So if someone comes to me with anxiety, then I can give them remedies that will support and calm them down, calm the nervous system, calm the anxiety response, support the adrenal, lower the cortisol and the adrenaline level, depending on why they suffer from anxiety, but just to a general conversation. But then with homeopathy we go deeper. We try to understand, why is your anxiety kicking in? Where is it coming from? Is it fear? Is it performances? Is repressed trauma? It could be multiple, there could be multiple causes behind the anxiety. We want to understand what is the root cause of that anxiety for that person at the point in time. And that's what homeopathy does. Homeopathy goes deeper, triggers the energetic element, and through the energetic element will help then the herb works even better.
So, and there's probably someone listening to this episode right now and they're saying, okay, like I've depended on conventional medicine to deal with my conditions. And so, they probably don't see, even though you've mentioned it, how your practice is going to maybe help them.
Yeah, so I would say the main difference is that if we look at the allopathic approach, it is based on what is called a law of opposites. So I have, eczema. My skin is coming out in rashes, itchy, oozing. I go and see a dermatologist or go and see my GP. They give me steroids. The steroids will suppress and will work on suppressing the immune system. So the response that maybe causes eczema, which could be, an hyper response of the immune system or an inflammatory state of the skin tissue, will then be suppressed. So you suppress symptoms and they send you home and you think your eczema has disappeared. And then in 6 months down the line, you will have eczema again, or if with further suppression of further cortisone or steroids, then your eczema will show up as asthma and it will move deeper into the lungs. In my practice, or in general, like I'll call it alternative or traditional medicine, we look at everything. So I try to understand, what are you eating? What might be causing you to come up with eczema? Is it dairy? It's refined sugar. I'm looking at your iris. I'm looking at what it is that is causing your body to respond with eczema. Why the skin? The skin might be a contact with the external world, and so I'm trying to understand what it is that is causing your eczema. It's suppressed grief, it's suppressed anger. Then I look at, again, the different emotions and the different experiences. So normally my consultation, the first consultation lasts about 2 hours. So I really drill down from time of birth and even beyond that, because I want to know, is there a susceptibility throughout a generational susceptibility? I want to understand about your family. I want to understand your mom. Did she take hormones before you were born? Did you detox from hormones? Did your mom detox from hormones? We look at the whole, everything that this person with eczema is, why this person is presenting eczema. And so when we give a remedy to this person, we address everything. We address maybe the liver detoxification pathway, we address the lymphatic system, we address the emotions. So the idea is, I'm not suppressing, I'm finding the root cause of your eczema and I'm trying to give you a remedy that will target that cause and actually help you clear out the eczema rather than suppress it. So that in 6 months' time, you won't have eczema again, you'll be fine. So that will be the difference. We look at the root cause. We don't suppress the symptoms. We look at the individual. In allopathic medicine, they most likely, you go and see a specialist. They look at your eczema, skin, and then you're out. and they give you maybe the same remedy that another person with eczema, but a different story might be taking.
So in your practice, what types of conditions or imbalances do you see most often?
Yeah, so I tend to see currently a lot of children with in the autistic spectrum disorder, a lot of children with ADHD currently, and autoimmune disorders are now on the rise. Cancers are now on the rise, and colorectal cancers that are actually now on average, being presented by much younger patients than the average 50 plus. And infertility not only female infertility, but actually also male infertility with low sperm count. So, and I think they're all a reflection of how we eat, how we live our style, the toxin exposure, suppressed emotions, they are on the rise. And I think pretty much it's because of our lifestyle.
Yeah, and I wonder as well, and I do believe that homeopathy and herbalism and even conventional medicine can complement each other. But can you say that there's ever a point where homeopathy, like, is there any particular style or practice of medicine that when it comes to healing and restoring the body seems to be superior, just based on your studies, based on your experience with different people that you work with? Does this appear that either homeopathy or conventional medicine seems to work better in terms of the healing process?
So I think if we're looking at, I think it's important to differentiate chronic and acute. So if we have an acute condition, so you've just had an accident and you're bleeding and you're having an internal bleeding, or you have a fracture or a traumatic brain injury, then I don't even say, come see me. You have to go to A&E. You have to go to hospital. That's, modern medicine is out there. Surgery is out there. If you are in a septic state because you develop an infection and you didn't realize, or a sepsis, a septic cut, you have to get your antibiotics. So acute, I think, I wouldn't say there's anything better than modern medicine in terms of acute conditions when they are life-threatening.
Uh-huh.
We also work with acute when they're not life-threatening with homeopathy and herbal medicine. So when they are manageable to the point that there's no risk for the patient in terms of like life-threatening risk. But when it comes to chronic, I think that's where, in general, any form of traditional medicine, be Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, Western herbal medicine, homeopathy, then they have a bigger role to play, because we don't come from a place of, I'm giving you steroids, I'm giving you immunosuppressant, I'm giving you antibiotic just to clear the symptoms. We are trying to understand what is causing and what is the root cause, the cause of the symptoms, and what are the maintaining causes. Because in every presentation and every condition, is chronic and complex one, there are always different reasons. There's a main cause, there's a triggering element, and there's a maintaining element, because everyone is exposed to toxins or bacteria at any point in time. But why is it that someone is more susceptible than others? So that's when we look at what makes you more susceptible, and that's when we try and dig and investigate. So the way I would put it is, I'm an investigator. I try to put together the puzzle so that when it comes to giving you a solution, is a long-term solution that is not based on suppression, is based on a remedy and then address what is causing the issue. And therefore, once we eliminate the root cause, we eliminate the issue. But of course, there are nuances where if conditions, and say, for example, terminal cancers or neurodegenerative conditions have gone far to, beyond the ability to intervene, then of course, I always say we'll have to work and support each other. So I will never tell any of my patients to stop taking medications or not doing chemotherapy or not trying radiotherapy or not trying surgery, because ultimately is not for me to say, and that's an ethical boundary. It's important that the patient is fully free to decide how to deal with certain conditions. But definitely, I think when it comes to this situation, then integrative is even better. And even when we are at stages where there's nothing that we can do, I think we can still support their passing, and we can support them in a very humane way. So I think for me, the most important thing is looking at the person, not considering them just a label, looking at them, what makes them, and what I can do to make sure that that person specifically, with any condition that they come or present to me with, they are supportive for who they truly are. And I think that would be the main differentiator. We give them time. And sometimes even being able to sit there and be listened to for 2 hours is already part of the healing process.
On iridology for a moment earlier, and I know that there's a lot that can be deduced from, looking at the eyes or examining the eyes. Are there specific, or have there been specific nutritional patterns that you commonly observe through your iridology assessments?
Yes. Where do I start? So nutrition. So it's a really major topic. And again, as a person who comes from the south of Italy and grew on, authentic, organic, varied food, moving to a place in the UK where there is, I think, a disconnection with, probably things are changing now. People are a bit more aware now. But in general, I think there is a disconnection with how food, what the amount of difference that food can make in our health, in the expression of health, either positively or negatively. So the patterns that I see the most, and again, every eye is different, but I would say that what I tend to see the most is obviously the high consumption of ultra-processed food, refined sugar, refined food, and especially like high in sugar, and animal protein, a lot of meat and chicken. And I know there's a lot of attention around being organic, but ultimately I personally am of the school and the opinion that it is inflammatory food. It doesn't matter whether it's organic or not. And so high consumptions of animal protein is actually detrimental to health. And these are often the pattern that I tend to see. So people will always have issues with their hyperglycemia, cholesterol, high blood pressure. They all metabolic syndromes that are very much related to the way they eat and the way they live their lives daily.
And, how can nutrition support healing when paired with energetic or herbal approaches?
Yeah, so I always say something to my patient before we even start discussing herbs or homeopathy or mushrooms, for what matters. And that is, if you don't change your nutrition and you're not ready to make changes, then, there's a limited amount of lower room for improvement, because ultimately when we talk about, we need to consider that when we look at symptoms or presenting symptoms, we have to think about two concepts. One is what we call, I was taught in my school, a CEO, so cause, effect, and obstacle to cure. And so often your obstacle to cure is your nutrition, because foods make us. If we look at all our metabolic processes and our enzymes work in our body, if we don't feed our body with the right food, we then are bound to, at one point in life, often, towards the 30 years of age onwards, but now even earlier, we're bound to present list metabolic issues, and cardiovascular risk increases, autoimmune disorders might increase, and risk of cancer might increase. So generally, nutrition is key for me. So I always spend a lot of time in dissecting what my patients eat on a day-to-day basis, and we always try and adjust the nutrition according to what we're trying to achieve from a physical perspective, but also emotional perspective. So I am a big fan of what we call living foods. So if people can introduce in their diet raw vegetables and fermented foods and sprouted beans and legumes and microgreens, anything that has life retained to it and it has not been cooked at high temperature, so it should be cooked below 43 degrees Celsius, then that is food that is going to maintain all the high levels of bioavailable nutrients, including the antioxidant, the vitamins, the minerals that are essential for the right functioning and the physiology of the body. Because consuming, especially plant based food in living form can actually improve the gut flora, the energy level, promote detoxification, support overall health by easing the digestive process. So it's important that everything that we do with herbs and homeopathy is always, always, always supported with nutrition. And actually, when I have polymedicated patients, they are on many medications, and so we kind of like have to go through through layers of so-called obstacle to cure and toxicity. Nutrition is always possibly the first thing that we work on because it's the safest thing and is one of the most important way to support overall well-being.
Yeah. And, because we're almost at a close here, I wonder to an extent, as you talked about, using living foods, I wonder about the functions of like using food in a functional way, right? Like like, should the priority be when we're eating particular foods on the taste of that particular food? I know it may seem like a simple question, or the function of that food, right? Because there are people that when you tell them to switch to a more plant-based diet, they'll tell you, well, that food doesn't taste good, or, that's something that I don't want to like eat all the time. So should the focus be on the functionality of food, or whether or not that food is tasty or not?
Again, that is a misconception because you can have both at the same time. You can have food that is very tasty, plant-based, and it doesn't have to be all day long, every day, raw food, and in terms of like vegetables and fruit every day and just that every day of your life. That's not what I'm suggesting here, because there are some conditions that might be actually counterproductive to have raw food. But the best way to approach it is obviously individualized, looking at a case by case. But I think you can have the taste by today. I mean, I have my view on socials, but I think one positive thing is the easy access to information. And so there are a lot of accounts that share recipes and allow you to introduce a variety, all based on plants, and you can actually play around recipes. I love playing around with vegetables. Some of them are very versatile, like mushrooms. You can use them in different ways. Legumes are very versatile, and it's just a matter of finding your groove, finding what you really like in terms of taste, and then bring that in. Ultimately, health is a responsibility, is your responsibility, is the patient's responsibility. We can help with addressing what needs to be changed, and we can support the process, but ultimately the idea is I am empowering my patients to make changes and become responsible for their health. If they come to me for a quick fix, this is the wrong place. My clinic is the wrong place, because health is something that you have to maintain for the rest of your life. It's not an easy fix. And food and nutrition are part of that work. You have to understand that food is medicine, has always been medicine. Since Hippocrates' time, let the food be your medicine and medicine be your food. So food is number one, is your priority. And from a functional perspective, so you can bring in the taste, you can bring in the flavors at any point in time, but also from a functional perspective, plants are the main source of a main compound that's called polyphenol. Like they contain many phyto compounds, but polyphenols are some of the main compounds. And the plants, all plants, most of the plants, if not, I personally think all of them, are primer or a certain pathway in the body that is called NRFARE, which stands for nuclear factor erythroid 2, related factor 2, and then antioxidant response element. This is a pathway that is at the center is the core of our daily biological response to oxidative stress in the body. This pathway induces the synthesis, the production of enzymes that are antioxidant. They are detoxifying. They are cytoprotective, so they protect the cells from turning cancerous. They are anti-inflammatory. They switch on genes that are they help us maintain cellular balance, cellular homeostasis. They eliminate potentially damaging carcinogens and toxins. So this is a functional element, is how your body functions in the best possible way. And that's how you get it, by increasing your sources of fibers and plants and short chain fatty acids. So there's a functional element that you can enjoy with taste and flavors and variety. So I don't think they are mutually exclusive. Actually, I think that when people understand what they're doing, when they introduce plant-based food in their diet, then the fun begins.
Antonella, thank you so much for your time. Our other questions were to get into functional mushrooms, which I think we can definitely have you on to discuss that at another time. But at this moment, I want you to take this time to let people know where they can work with you, like what sites they should go to, and also social media where they can find you to work with you there.
So my website, and you can get more information about me on my website, and it's the www.thegardenofherbalhealing.com, and my social Instagram is at the Garden of Herbal Healing, and my Facebook is also the Garden of Herbal Healing. Talking about variety,
Yeah.
can be very, very easy to remember. So that's where they can find me.
Well, Antonella, thank you so much again, and thank you, audience, for tuning in again. This is me, Stefan Lessie, just reminding you that choosing health is about choosing power, possibility, and purpose. Welcome to week 46 of 52 Choices. This week, let's swap 1 hour of screen time for reading. Scientific studies show this isn't just a preference, it's a brain boost. Research indicates that reading enhances brain connectivity and cognitive performance, unlike excessive screen time, which can decrease white matter integrity. Plus, reading from physical books improves comprehension and retention more effectively than digital screens. Make the switch and give your brain the workout it deserves.